Welcome. I want to just welcome everybody. I'm assuming you know where you are, but this is the Movement Café that is sponsored monthly by the United Methodist Creation Justice Movement, as well as the Circle Faith Future is my organization too, and we help support this as well. So wants to help sponsor this event. Today, we're going to be talking about solar for congregations, solar for conferences. This idea of solar in the big picture as well as at the local level. Like, how do we mobilize and understand solar as a real opportunity that can be sort of broadly applied? And I'm going to let Dawn really offer us the nutshell for today. But for right now, I just want to say welcome. My name is Rashenda. I am in the Pacific Northwest Conference. I live in Oregon. And I just wanted to welcome people. I love to see people entering. There's going to be chat. I want to encourage folks to use the chat and ask questions in the chat, but also introduce yourself. Where are you? What are you up to? Why is this calling to you, right? Because this really matters, and we know it does. And every person seems to have their own story about what it is that pushes them over the edge to say, I have just got to take some next steps, and I'm willing to learn about how to do that. And really want to gather some people around me who might be able to answer questions or just listen if it gets frustrating. So okay, so we're going to keep it moving today because we actually have a few people who are going to be sharing with us, and I want to make sure that everybody gets the opportunity. Um, and so Don, I want to turn it over to you to tell us a little bit more about the United Methodist Creation Justice Movement. And so, yeah, Don, unfortunately, I can't see you. There you are, see on my screen, and welcome you to go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Rashinda. Hi, everyone. My name is Dawn Lewis, and I am a new member of the Western North Carolina Conference. I just recently moved to Winston-Salem, and I am so happy to see everybody here. So usually we have Kathy Velasquez Everhart that talks about the movement because she was one of the founders of it, but I'll try to do the best I can in her place. So, as we all know, the church has kind of had a tradition of affirming creation justice, and it kind of calls on us as Christians to live in just relationships with each other and with God's creation. And the church has had statements and writings and so forth that have called us to do that work. And I believe what happened was, as more and more concerns about climate change, pollution, loss of habitat, extinction came up, there was just this sense of urgency that United Methodists kind of play a bigger role and a leadership role in working toward kind of healing, restoration, and justice. So they formed this movement, and it really just connects all those within the church, whether they're with agencies or creation teams or green teams or just everybody together to share out and look for ways to build and grow the movement and put faith into action by kind of building on those relationships and structures that are within the church. And so this cafe is just one kind of output of that, where we kind of can share out and educate, create action, and just come together under this kind of cafe umbrella to talk about things. And that is kind of a segue into our program today, which is all about solar. And I'm really excited about this program. One of the ways I think we can put faith into action and really let the light shine, so to speak, is to transform our church facilities from energy that comes from fossil fuels to clean energy renewables. And solar energy is playing an important role kind of across the globe in that transition. And there's lots of reasons why this is a great time to transition to solar energy from both a financial perspective as well as in the area of creation care. And I'll let this great team of presenters touch on all that. But I just want to say that when I see that when faith institutions kind of embrace renewable energy, they have the power to inspire their followers and surrounding communities and spread that message of sustainability and the importance of caring for the environment and creation. And I'm looking forward to learning what I can from this wonderful group of presenters that we have today. Now that I do have this microphone, or I do want to do a quick shout out. I just completed the United Methodist Creation Justice Earthkeeper training in Birmingham, and I see that there's a couple of my amazing team members that I did it with that are on this call. Elizabeth McCormick she is a mission advocate for the South Central jurisdiction, and Shell Mills, who's doing great work up there in Ellensburg, North Carolina. So I'm so happy to see you guys here. Okay, Rashinda, that's all I have.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Dawn. And yes, yay for new earth keepers out there. Just a big shout out. That's awesome. Really, really great program. All right. So we have a lot to do today. And so I want to turn to our first part of our conversation, which will be with Reverend John Pitney and Lou Stagnito. And Reverend John Pitney is a member of the Oregon-Idaho Conference, and he co-leads the Interfaith Solar Campaign. He is also on the Creation Justice team for Oregon Interfaith Power and Light. And I get to work with him there, which is actually just a wonderful thing that I get to do. Lou Stagnito is a retired organizational development consultant who is in the give back phase of his life. He's the volunteer director of the Interfaith Solar Campaign and brings expertise in change management to efforts to build this new green economy. I'm not going to be able to introduce everyone who's going to share today, so look in the chat also for me to drop in bios as we go along. And right now, I want to turn it over to John and Lou.
Hey, good morning. Thank you, Rashinda. I'm sitting in the high desert of Central Oregon, and good to see your faces from around the country. Yeah, as Rashinda said, I'm retired from the Oregon-Idaho Conference, and by serendipitous means, Lou Stagnito and I ran into each other 2 or 3 years ago and started putting together the conversations that led to what we're calling the Interfaith Solar Campaign. We feel like we're still brand new, but you know, in some ways, I've been working through churches for over 40 years on these things. And what do I have to show for that? Oh, maybe a little part in 10 congregations having solar on their roofs. You know, 10 is a lot, but we don't have time to do 10 every 40 years. And so one of the things that means is for United Methodist is connection. We're way beyond putting up a website and having people show up from individual congregations to see what their individual congregation can do. And so when Lou and I started talking, we really wanted to make connections. We really knew that we had to rely on partnerships. And so one of our first partnerships was with the Oregon-Idaho Conference of the United Methodist Church. And we were able to quickly do a survey of the solar readiness of all 130 church properties in the state of Oregon, which will probably surprise some of you from the Southeast who have more than that number of congregations in your districts, but you know, whatever. Having surveyed all of those, we rated them 1, 2, 3 in their appropriateness for solar. And with the help of Tim Overton Harris, who you'll hear from later, the dean of our cabinet, and with the district superintendents, we from those 130, we distilled down about a dozen that we thought were a good fit for solar, but also that were representative of the variety of our churches across the state, rural, urban, suburban, diversity of communities, and et cetera. And so we started working with those 12. And along the way, we met Collective Sun, and They have become our fiscal partner and agent and wonderful friends. And as we started working with the conference, we tried to use the United Methodist connection. Number one, we passed legislation at annual conference supporting the Interfaith Solar Campaign, so that everybody was on board with that, so that we could go to districts and individual congregations and say, well, remember, we voted on this. So we weren't starting from square one. And as we worked with districts and with all of our related connections, we found some funding sources in district church extension societies. We talked with our regional Faith Foundation Northwest, and eventually found some funding for what we wanted to do from the Cornerstone Fund of the United Church of Christ. And from there, we've been working. Thank God for Zoom, because we can work all over the state. We spend a lot of time talking with groups of congregational leaders wherever they are. And this summer, 3 of the congregations that we started talking to first a couple of years ago did installations, and we're in the process of working with the others, including 40 or 45 congregations of multiple faiths beyond United Methodist. So I think that's what I'll say. Lou, to you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lou Stagnito, and just for full transparency, I just want to let you know I'm running for House Speaker. Okay, I just needed to get a little laugh. Thank you. Yeah, so John said it really well. What I want to add to this is kind of our hypothesis and why we decided to work with faith communities. And we're really operating under this reality of a climate emergency, and we know it's difficult for people to actually look at that and not want to look away. But our hypothesis is that as we get faith communities and congregations to take a tangible step in fighting climate change, by putting solar panels on their building, our hypothesis is that work not only reduces carbon emissions from one more building, which is significant, but really it will inspire both the congregants and the surrounding communities as they see those solar panels on churches and other houses of worship. And we hope that will inspire them to take their own climate action. So we're really here to build a movement of houses of worship throughout the country. And we are inviting churches that work for solar to take that step. And we're inviting, the majority of churches that won't work for solar for whatever reason, and there are several, we're also inviting them to support this effort because we believe that there's strength in numbers, and collectively we can have more influence, and we can show that people of faith are coming together to do the hard work of helping to change this energy economy into more of a renewable energy focus. So we want to invite all of you to participate with us in some way to inspire people within your own communities and within your own faith and congregations to also do the same. And so I'm going to leave it there for right now. I'm glad to see so many people on this. This is great. And we really, again, invite you to participate with this effort, because we believe we can get both tangible carbon reductions by doing this work, but also inspire thousands more people to do their own climate action.
Oh, that's wonderful, Lou. That's great. I want to let people know too that David Cox is here with us on the call. He's going to speak in just a couple of minutes, but he's worked closely with Lou and Reverend John as a part of the number of churches that have embraced solar in in the Oregon, Idaho conference. So just to let you know that he is going to be sharing as well a little bit about how that went. I want to introduce next Nicole Withrow from Collective Sun. So Nicole is the director of sales at Collective Sun, and she has spent over 25 years. She has that much experience in sales, management, contract administration, and project fulfillment. I mean, that's the goal, right? Project fulfillment. How do we get
Yes.
there? So I'm going to drop the rest of her bio in the chat, but I'm going to turn it over to her. And I also just want to shout out to Lee Barkin, who is here. He's also with Collective Sun as the Chief Community Officer with broad industry experience in renewables. And so look to the chat for their full bio. Go ahead, Nicole.
Thank you, Rashinda. Good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here today talking with all of you about the journey to solar for communities of faith. I'm just going to warn you all, I'm not as funny as Lou, and I am not running for Speaker of the House. As Rashinda indicated, I'm the Director of Sales for Collective Sun. And before I jump into the nuts and bolts of going solar, I'd like to share just a little bit of background on who we are at Collective Sun. So we're a solar finance company dedicated to serving communities of faith and other nonprofits nationwide. And for the past decade plus, we've been helping nonprofits navigate the solar journey and connecting them with financing solutions designed to fit the unique needs of their organizations. And in just the past 6 years, we've partnered with over 200 nonprofit organizations nationwide on their solar financing. And over 50% of those projects have been with faith communities. This experience has made us very familiar with the challenges that faith communities face going solar, as well as the challenges of the solar installation process itself. Beyond all of that, solar for nonprofits is our passion. This is what we're here for, ensuring that nonprofits and tax-exempt organizations operate sustainably, both fiscally and environmentally. It's fundamental to who we are as an organization at Collective Sun. And we believe that when organizations are able to tap the power of solar energy, they're then freed up to focus on what they do best, providing essential programming and services to their communities. So now that you've heard a little bit about who we are, we can get right to the nuts and bolts about going solar. So really, depending on where you're located in the country, the mechanics of exploring solar are going to look similar regardless of what state you're in or what city you're in. But the first thing I recommend is to identify a solar team or committee to work with you on this journey. And then with that team, start talking about logistics, where you might place a solar array. There could be many solutions or possibilities with your congregation, or maybe there's just one. It's going to be different for everybody. Gather 12 months of electric bills. Evaluate funding options. This is a big one I've got in one bullet point on my notes. So what does that mean? You got to figure out what resonates with the culture and internal resources of your congregation. Some folks are going to prefer to purchase a system directly. And that means you're going to need to be highly organized, have the bandwidth and expertise to manage the installation of a solar system, and be comfortable with long-term ownership risks of that solar system. Others are going to be more inclined to go the route of third-party ownership, like leases or power purchase agreements, which will put the responsibility of managing the installation of the solar system and long-term ownership responsibilities on a third party, the lessor or PPA provider. If a third-party ownership is your focus, if that's the path that you're exploring, I do suggest that you go to your local utility website and confirm that they do allow leases or PPAs. If you're paying with cash, doing a direct purchase, you can do that anywhere in the country. Leases, almost as many places, and power purchase agreements, you're going to find that opportunity is a little more limited. So you do want to go to the website for utility or your Public Utility Commission and just make sure that's an option for you. I just want to throw in there's no right or wrong answer to the question how you're going to fund the solar system. It's going to be based on what resonates with the internal culture of your congregation. The next few items on the list are going to fall to congregations to handle in a scenario of purchasing the system directly. However, with a lease or power purchase agreement, the burden of most of the following tasks are going to be the responsibility of that third-party owner, a lessor or PPA provider. Those tasks include things like identifying reputable local solar installers, And if your utility website, which you definitely went to and checked, if they have a list of required service providers or installers, you want to start with that list first. So in some instances, you will see a very restricted access to installers. They're going to want you to use somebody that's gone through their process and been approved. Perform your due diligence or vetting on those installers. Check their references, look for reviews online, engage in a competitive bidding process. If you're going the route of purchasing the system directly, you're going to want to look at multiple solar bids. The norm or the recommended would be at least 3, and then you're going to want to compare and evaluate those proposals. Those things are going to be on everybody's solar to-do list, regardless of where your church is located in the US, especially if you're going the route of a direct purchase. Other than the availability of third-party ownership, those leases and power purchase agreements that I mentioned, there is one primary factor that can really vary from region to region, and that is the savings generated from going solar. So what impacts that number? Solar savings is impacted by what you pay your utility company for energy and the cost that installers in your region are charging to install solar. The savings your solar system is going to generate is directly related to the cost of energy in your region. So I mentioned this for very good reason. For example, if you live in Oregon, like John and Lou, and you talk to a friend whose California congregation went solar last year, the reality of their solar savings is going to look very different from yours if you're located in Oregon and many other states across the country for that matter. So the other thing that can vary is the cost to install the solar system. It can look quite different from region to region because we have in some parts of the country very robust solar markets that have lots of competition, which drives down those prices, while areas that are slower adopters of solar, as well as some rural areas where an installer may have to travel significant distance to get to your location, you might see higher costs relative to those robust markets for installing your solar system. And I mention this because I know that everyone on today's call is united in their commitment to caring for the planet and doing their respective part to reverse the climate emergency we find ourselves in. And I mention this so that folks remember to level set expectations around solar savings and the idea of solar savings being a cash cow of a revenue stream. And just know that in areas where there is a higher cost to install solar and lower energy costs relative to other parts of the country, that just means maybe there's a need to layer grants and donations into your project economics so that the purchase makes sense for your congregation fiscally. And don't let that discourage you. Being aware of this ahead of time is actually really helpful because it can help manage expectations and get you motivated and excited to find a solution that will work for your congregation. All right, and I hope I haven't scared anyone away with that information, but the most important item is the next one on the list, and that is to identify resources and resource partners. It's going to be pivotal, and I think it's a key to success. I've put together a collection of links that can help get folks started, and I'm going to give that to Rashinda so she can get that out to everyone, but the goal is to arm you with resources. For most folks in the position of exploring solar for their congregation, they may have experience adding solar to their home. And it's very common for us to hear in conversations with congregations that their solar champion added solar to their home recently. But in most cases, that's really the extent of their experience navigating a solar project. So resources and resource partners. Some of the links that I've included, links to our friends at Solar United Neighbors who have a great resource page, the link to Collective Sun's website, a link to the actual Treasury guidance and the IRS elective pay overview, as well as the White House summary of directive pay. And I urge you to go to the website for your local Interfaith Power and Light chapter, where you can find resources specific to your region. And of course, our friends and partners at Interfaith Solar Campaign. Just a little bit about how we connected with John and Lou. You know, Collective Sun started with a pretty straightforward mission, just a little mission. And that was to help every nonprofit in the country go solar. So when we met John and Lou from Interfaith Solar Campaign, they had reached out to discuss solar financing options for churches that they were working with. And it seemed only fitting that their goal was similar to ours. They just wanted to start an interfaith climate movement. That was all. So it was really a match made in heaven. Anyway, from there, our two organizations really complement each other and the skill sets from each organization as we help combine our efforts to help nonprofits navigate the process of going solar and provide them with solutions to fund those projects. We've been quite fortunate to become partners with groups that are like-minded and also recognize the value in aligning oneself with others on a similar path and to collaborate wherever there's an opportunity to do more good when you do it together. So before I move on to the exciting topic of tax benefits for nonprofits, I do want to mention again that the resource links that I'm going to share will also include links to recent webinars that we've done at Collective Sun that unpack direct pay and the bonus adders available under the Inflation Reduction Act. So with the passing of the Inflation Reduction Act, and I'm assuming everybody on this call has heard about that. If not, the resource links will help you get up to speed there. This is the most significant climate legislation in US history. And with it came the advent of something called direct pay, bringing long overdue access to solar tax benefits to nonprofits who qualify. And that includes communities of faith. So direct pay provides congregations with a 30% tax rebate on the purchase of a solar system. It's the nonprofit equivalent to the ITC or investment tax credit that many of you have heard of before. In addition, the IRA created opportunities to layer additional savings on top of that 30% rebate in the form of some bonus adders. And I would again urge folks to check out the links to the webinars, watch those recordings, and check out the links directly to the IRS guidance as well, since we don't have time to unpack all of that here today. I would be remiss if I did not mention briefly that if you've raised funds through grants or donations that are earmarked for solar, those grants or donations, restricted use funds, plus your anticipated direct pay rebate cannot exceed the installation cost of your solar system. But if they do, then the amount of that anticipated rebate will be reduced so that the total amount of the rebate plus those earmarked funds will equal the cost of the solar system. And this is referred to as excessive benefit. You can learn more about that rule in our webinar recording and on direct pay, that webinar, and on the IRS website as well. Now for the fun part, let's talk about ways to fund solar installations. Obviously, folks, if they have them, can use cash reserves, grant funds, donations from congregants and supporters, solar loans, solar leases, power purchase agreements. Obviously, those last two, leases and power purchase agreements, are going to be available in wherever your utility allows them. If you do have cash reserves and you intend to take out a loan for the purchase of the solar system or have donations or grant funds, and you feel comfortable with and have the bandwidth and internal resources to navigate the process of going solar, as well as navigating the direct pay tax filing, then a direct purchase and ownership of the solar system may be your option of choice. And we call this the DIY approach, do-it-yourself approach, as you'll be doing the heavy lifting yourself. It can be overwhelming, and for some, marred with obstacles that can put your project on a perpetual back burner. So we just kind of put a warning out to be mindful of seeking those resources and resource partners if this is the path that you're on, and really being diligent about moving through obstacles in that process so that you can reach successful solar installation. If you have cash reserves, donations, or grant funds, and you do not feel comfortable with or have the bandwidth and internal resources to navigate the process of going solar on your own and navigating the direct pay tax filing, you may be more inclined to explore a solar lease for your congregation. Let's talk about briefly leases and PPAs. So this third-party ownership, how do they compare? The two options are similar in that a third party owns, operates, and maintains the solar equipment. That third party, being the owner of the equipment, will also be responsible for the tax filings associated with the purchase of the system. So upfront costs can vary depending on project economics and the provider. The big difference is going to be with the lease, the congregation owns the energy generated by the solar system. And if available in your region, you would also retain any incentives like renewable energy certificates or RECs. With a power purchase agreement, the third party owner also owns the energy, which the congregation must then purchase from them, albeit at a lower rate than what you're currently paying your utility. At Collective Sun, we refer to our Sun for All solar lease as an easy button solution because it puts the project development and construction management on us, the lessor, while removing the burden of tax filings and mitigating ownership risks associated with the long-term ownership of a solar system. It also removes many of the obstacles experienced in that DIY approach by relying on the expertise of our team. I know that was a lot of information in a short period of time. For those that have specific questions for us, we invite you to join Lee and I in the breakout session or reach out to us or our partners at Interfaith Solar Campaign, because we are here to help. And Lee, I think we have like 2 minutes left if you want to add anything to this presentation.
No, that was fantastic. Thank you, Nicole. And I again encourage folks to reach out with questions. And I know it's overwhelming at times, but hang in there, buckle up, because it's worth it at the end when you flip the switch and you energize that system. It's a phenomenal experience. So thank you everyone for what you're doing to advance clean energy.
Thank you so much to Lee and Nicole. Nicole, that was a lot. And I really appreciate how you just sort of broke that down. I mean, 15 minutes when we planned this cafe, 15 minutes for that portion. We were like, oh my goodness. I have had the blessing of sitting in rooms with Lou and John, Reverend John, to hear how they present this. I've had the blessing of getting to know Lee and Nicole a little more, and their goal is to see solar unfold as sort of a movement through congregations and conferences. So they're not there to sell you a system. It's not like going to the car dealership. It's so much more than that. It's about learning about the process, about exploring what might be the best for your community. It's about thinking first steps, where would we put it? To last steps, which is how can we be a hub of resilience for our community? How will this change how our community lives and responds every day and in times of need within the community? That's what we're doing here. That's what they're doing here. And so it makes it a very, very, very engaging conversation where everyone is sincerely looking for the best outcome. So speaking of those congregations and those local churches, I want to move us to, hearing some of the stories from folks who are kind of on the ground. And we have a few folks here to share some short stories here with us. Tara Fleischer is here. Reverend Tim Overton Harris. I'm not sure if he's been able to join the call. He's a district superintendent, so he's looking at his watch saying, I can make this window. So when he arrives, we'll be glad to see him. And also David Cox, who worked with Lou and Reverend John on projects in the Open Door churches. So I'm going to go ahead and start with David. He's also, of course, in Oregon and is a professional civil engineer with 40 years experience. You don't need that, but hearing from somebody with that hopefully will help us see a way forward. I'm going to drop that bio in the chat. And David, if you want to go ahead.
Okay, well, thank you. And please, I noticed the goblins still occasionally take over my screen. If that happens, just avert your eyes. It seems to not last very long. So I'll go ahead. Yes, I've been asked to tell you about our project, our successful project, where we put solar panels on 5 churches here in Oregon. We call ourselves the Open Door Churches. And just a bit of explanation, that's a partnership between the United Methodist churches in Salem. There's 5 of us in this partnership, actually 6 buildings we put solar panels on. So we have a common pastors and we have a common youth group. We sort of share the things we think makes sense to share. But we do have separate financing and separate congregations. So this project started about 4.5 years ago or so. And I think it's important to know the beginnings because I believe you'll all have this experience. It started in a Sunday school class for adults, actually senior citizens. And it seems like no matter what the assigned topic of discussion was supposed to be, we would turn the conversation to global warming and climate change. And to be honest, we were upset. We didn't think the federal government was really doing enough at that time, not taking it seriously enough. Our state government, Oregon, a little bit better, we thought, but still not doing enough. And then our business and industry leaders, some of them couldn't even admit that global warming was a real thing. So week after week, we would have this discussion. Week after week, we would get upset. And finally, what we realized we were saying was we were upset because we didn't think other people were doing enough. And when you say it that way, other people not doing enough, you almost immediately have to then ask yourself, okay, well, what are we doing? And we had to admit we weren't doing anything either. So we formed a committee. I got to be on that committee. I have solar panels on my roof. And we looked at what we could do, maybe a new heating system, maybe an energy audit. We didn't think that was enough. So we finally decided maybe we can put solar panels on our church roof. Well, this was the first United Methodist church, and our little committee got started. Before long, the other churches of the Open Door Partnership heard about it. And within a month, all 5 churches were represented on our committee. All 5 churches wanted to see if they could put solar panels on their buildings as well. So I have to admit, we had our doubts. We didn't know if our roofs were strong enough. We didn't know if some of our buildings are very old. We didn't know if 80, 90-year-old wiring was compatible with solar panel wiring. We didn't know if our roof orientations was proper. And then 2 of our buildings were historic. So we didn't know if we could put solar panels on historic buildings. But we got together. We had some professional help with John and Lou and the Oregon Clean Power Co-op. We hired an engineer to look at our roofs. We started tackling these problems one by one. We did have to strengthen one of the church roofs. We abandoned another roof slope completely because that would have needed strengthening. But we worked with the local historic preservation office and found out, yes, we can put solar panels on historic buildings as long as they aren't seen from the ground. The big one, how much would it cost and where would the money come from? That was our real obstacle that we had a hard time getting over. At first, we considered loans, but we found out that there were some grants available. So we applied for those, and kind of to our surprise, we got several grants. We got a grant from PGE and another grant from the Department of Energy. Combine that with the Energy Trust funds, and our total project was $400,000. We were able to get over $225,000 in grants. We knew all along, though, that we were going to eventually have to ask our congregation for money. And so when we designed this project, we wanted something that would capture their imagination, that would make them think, wow, I want to support that. I can fund that. I can help give some money to that. And we picked 50%. We told ourselves, if we can design a project that replaces 50% of the power that we currently get from Portland General Electric, if we can do that with our solar panels, that would be enough to capture the attention of our church members. Well, it turned out we were able to do a lot better. When we got our final designs, we were up to about the 80% level, that we could replace 80% of our PGE power with solar panel power. And so that made it, I won't say easy, but easier to raise funds from the congregations. So we were able to fund the project through the donations from the congregations and our grants by ourselves. So we got to work through the pandemic, through the wildfires, and we got our solar panels up. It took longer than we thought because of these things, but they're in operation now. And I have to say, we didn't do it for the money. We were doing it for the environmental reasons. We wanted to make a statement, prove that it can be done. But it turns out our project will save the Open Door churches collectively about $25,000 a year. And they're guaranteed, the solar panels are guaranteed to produce at a high level for 25 years. $25,000 a year for 25 years. We can't ignore that. That is really a big help to our churches. So not only are we doing something good for the environment, but we're also doing something good for our financial bottom line. So what did we learn? Well, I'd say we learned several things. First of all, never underestimate what a determined group of senior citizens can do. That's the first thing. Secondly, if you see something that needs to be done, you don't have to wait for other people. Do it. You can do it yourself. We've come to realize that churches, we think, are an under-recognized, underappreciated resource in the fight against climate change. They're invariably big buildings. You can find a west-facing or south-facing slope on almost all of them, and they're full of people who really want to make a difference. So I think we're just scratching the beginning line here. Finally, I'd like to say we had some spin-offs that really we hadn't thought about, but because of our project, at least a dozen people in these congregations have decided to put solar panels on their own personal houses, and more than a dozen have signed up for community solar. So we hadn't thought about those spin-offs before, but that they're real also. So that's our story. I hope I kept to the 5 minutes and the goblin stayed away. And if you've got any questions, you can ask.
That is marvelous. Yes, that's a great story. Just love that story. Had just so $25,000. That's Oregon money. So that's Oregon savings where we have low electricity costs. And when
Yes.
you pencil it out, it can look a lot like you're saving a lot less than somewhere else where the electricity just costs a lot more. So if you save that much in Oregon money, think about how much you're going to save in your state. So that's fantastic. So Reverend Tim Overton Harris was able to join us, and I think he's still here. And I want to really, he's got a window, so I want to call on him next. And he also worked with the Open Door group and with John Pitney, Reverend John and Lou. And so Tim, I'm going to go ahead and just turn it over to you, and I'm going to pop his bio in the chat.
All right. Well, you are hearing me, right? Okay, good. Moving from one place to another, one Zoom for another, you always are worried that everything's not going to go with you. I am a district superintendent in the Oregon, Idaho Annual Conference, and I've been working with John and Lou around how United Methodists here can connect with the Interfaith Solar Campaign of Oregon and their project. I will tell you that the best thing that happened for us was that a group of caring environmental folks got an action request to annual conference that got approved, and then got which made the Oregon Idaho Annual Conference a member of the Interfaith Solar Campaign. The reason that that was important is because it gave permission then for us to start having higher level conversations and to bring in the cabinet table to conversation with Lou and John around the whole issue of how we can move solar forward in our local congregations. So that was a critical step. It wasn't organized or planned by specific leadership within the conference, but it was our commitment to climate change and addressing environmental needs that kind of brought it to the table. So with that, I don't know how cabinets in other areas work, but in our cabinet, if something like that goes on, we say, okay, who's going to be responsible now on the cabinet level for interfacing with and working with the organizations that we are partnering with? And so that fell to me. I also happen to have a good relationship with John. And so everybody felt like I could either keep John in check or John could keep me in check. We weren't quite sure which of those was going to be the thing. But that allowed me to sit down at a table then with Lou and John and to really start brainstorming about how can we reach out and make this effective and local. How can we get it into the local churches, and how can we make sure that we're doing the right thing? So they did a wonderful thing in that they did sort of an initial high-level survey of all of our churches in the Oregon Idaho Annual Conference, and in that kind of determined which ones seemed to be the best to consider for solar. And that gave us a list. Then we could go to the individual district superintendents for the individual districts and say, here's 5 churches, here's 4 churches, here's 7 churches that seem prime for consideration of doing this. And that then opened the ability for the district superintendent, who I encouraged and helped, to go to the congregations and say, why don't we have a meeting where we can talk to Lou and John, where we can get some sense of what this means, what might be involved, take a little bit deeper look at your buildings, your facilities, your campuses, and say, is this really viable? Is this something that we could step forward with? And that work was really helpful because then we could target it on places that already knew that their facility was, at least from a high level view, good for solar, which I think was an initial step in the door for those conversations. I think that we in Oregon, Idaho, all of you probably know that we tend to be focused a lot on climate. We're trying to figure out how to engage our environment in ways that are helpful for everyone. And we're also trying to figure out how to deal with reaching into communities that aren't well served, and trying to figure out how to help one community serve another community. And so some of what the Interfaith Solar Campaign has been doing is talking about how you can do some of this work in your local congregation, even if your church does not fit a solar scenario, that congregation can't actually put solar panels on its building. And that's been an interesting conversation, and I think we need to expand that a little bit. We haven't gone as far, I think, as we could with that. I think that from a denominational standpoint, what we needed in Oregon, Idaho, and our stepping forward in all of this is we needed to make sure that the DSs were willing to help. And part of that came from the permission that the annual conference gave us to actually say, we are a member of this, we need to invest. But we also had a really good system of making sure we were introducing people to each other. So when there was a congregation that was identified, I introduced Lou and John to the district superintendents. The district superintendents then were able to introduce Lou and John to the local churches. And there was a direct personal kind of pathway that was created and was able to continue. And that helped in just the relational stuff. This is just, we all know that this kind of work goes best when there's a relational component to it. And we were able to then help relationships move along. We also realized that partnerships are essential to get this work done. One of the biggest hesitations that local churches have is regarding money. Where's the funds going to come from to do something like this? In Oregon, Idaho, we have a unique group, I think, that are called extension societies, and they're groups that get funds in various ways. But then they make grants to local churches. Now, oftentimes those grants are used for things like buying a new dishwasher or helping with the repair of the roof. But we've been working with our extension societies, and at least in the Cascadia district, they have approved a pool of money where they can then grant out that money to local churches for this solar work. And so that's really been a helpful conversation. Also, as Lou and John and I have talked, and as the Interfaith Solar Campaign has evolved, the whole thing of leases and loans has developed, and that's become much more attractive to people once they can deal with the issues of what happens if we stop being a church. Does that mean this goes away? Do we have to pay that when we close? All that kind of, those legal kinds of conversations, and helping people understand that that there are ways we can continue, in ways that things can continue to happen. The other thing I want to say is we were very deliberate when John and Lou produced for us a list of churches to say, okay, where's a rural church? Where's an urban church? Where's a large church? Where's a small church? Where's a church that has some people of color connection or community that they're serving? And how can we then deliberately be not just a suburban church program? How can we make sure that we're getting, and so we get a small church in a farming community in the Willamette Valley of Oregon to sign on and work. We get a suburban church that's moving forward in their process of being involved in this. We've got a small town church out in Eastern Oregon that is moving ahead with their exploration of all this. We're deliberately trying to make sure that our story is broad, so that we are looking at all kinds of different congregations with all kinds of different money, with all kinds of different locations, in order to say anyone can do this. So that's really what I got to say.
that so I hope everyone's hearing this like round table, how the process involved gaining permission, connecting relationships, and then looking at sort of the big picture, right? Where are the churches where we can bring together a round table of understanding of what it might be like for a rural church versus a suburban church to begin the process of solar panels, and how can we leverage the resources that already exist in the conference, such as these special sort of building funds, to follow into that. We can unfold that into our roundtable conversation and discover resourcing that we didn't even know we had. And so, Tim, I hope you're able to stay for the breakout rooms. I know your time is short, but I certainly would invite you to. And really, really thank you for coming and sharing that, because I think a lot of us need to hear that this is really possible. This is happening. So, so be encouraged. Be encouraged. And it's not just happening in Oregon. This has been a kind of an Oregon rich story, because we really wanted to show you kind of how something can happen. But it's happening everywhere. And I want to introduce next Kara Fleischer, and she is in Florida. So she works with the Creation Care Ministry. After she spent a career in public relations, she turned those gifts to Creation Care in Florida, and she leads the Florida UMC Creation Care Task Force team. And I'm going to turn it over to her and let her share about what that's like. Go ahead, Kara.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Tim. It was really helpful to hear how you guys are doing it in Oregon. I have been the Creation Care Task Team leader for almost 4 years and on the team for an additional 8 before that. And we have really been focusing on equipping the local church for Creation Care ministry. And, you know, part of that, we do a monthly webinar, and we have had educational webinars on solar, and that's always felt like the pinnacle of Creation Care ministry, right? Like, you've done all the other things and now you can go solar. But now that we have the Inflation Reduction Act giving 30% rebate to nonprofits, we feel like the time is here. And so in Florida, we are really taking it and running with it. Recently, I have accepted a job as the administrative assistant to the DS here in Northwest Florida. And that has really been a great way for me to connect more with the local church in my district. And my DS has been really supportive with me doing things like this, and also allowing me to speak at charge conferences to be able to share about Creation Care, and also this fantastic time that we have to go solar. So my big focus is to communicate to the local church about the financial interests, and it almost feels like it's answered prayer to the budget crunch we're experiencing. I don't know that it's a coincidence that we are losing 30% of our churches to disaffiliation, 30% or more of our money, and we get 30% rebate on solar. But I'm taking it as a sign that we need to move forward in this area. So I've been communicating to the churches about the money that this can save, with lower operating costs, avoiding rising energy costs, showing the world through solar evangelism, our values, and also becoming a shelter during power outages, which unfortunately, where we are, right in the Panhandle, right off of the Gulf of Mexico, we have hurricane after hurricane after hurricane. So that is a big focus of what we're doing. We talk about the financing. We have the Florida United Methodist Foundation and also the Climate Bank. And what we're trying to do is gather as many churches that are interested as possible in the district, so we can bring this bundle to installers. And so now we have 6 churches that are ready to go, but I'm continuing to try to gather more. We're hoping to get that number to 10. And we have 3 installers that are giving estimates. And so we're really moving towards this. The main message is, now is the time to take advantage of this tax rebate that we've been given, and to help us use this tool fix our financial crisis, because, you know, we are really in a crunch, especially in some smaller churches in North Florida, and this could really be answered prayers. So one thing that's great is I gave one of these talks and the Bishop of Florida was there, and he came up to me afterwards and pulled me aside and was like, I'm very interested in this as a state program. And so I hope that this will become you know, real big statewide push. So I'm very interested in hearing about this interfaith solar campaign and how we can bring that to our annual conference and perhaps sign on to that to give us that same kind of power to make it something that's been decided as a whole conference. So that's what we're doing here in Florida.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, so from Oregon to Florida, and a whole different kind of sort of necessities bubble up. And so having that regional knowledge, it's knowing that this is a big thing that we're all doing together, but also that there's specifics that we can find specific help, input, and folks to stand alongside wherever it is that we are. So that's gosh, Kara, thank you.
Thank you.
We have
I just wanted
go ahead.
to add, sorry,
Yes.
one thing I was going to mention is, as you all know, Florida is a hot mess politically, and so we do not even go there. This is all about, you know, positive messages about saving money and using sunshine, and we avoid any kind of traps that, you know, the typical folks might fall into about you know, even saying the words climate change. Let's just be honest, even though we know that this is absolutely within our values and in our book of discipline and everything else, or our resolutions, but we just know that this is a financial thing, so we steer clear of any kind of political talk.
Yes. Isn't it? It's tough because there's people, right? I always come down to like just love on the people, because that's the people in the sunshine. Bring the people in the sunshine together, and we're going to be all right. We really are. And I want to. We've got our last couple of minutes, and I want to offer those to Mel Caraway. So Reverend Mel is in North Texas. He's retired clergy, and he has turned his energy to the intersection of climate justice in Texas, works with Texas Impact, which is also Interfaith Power and Light. I'm going to pop his bio in the chat and just turn it over to him. We only have a few minutes left, but Mel is just right at the center of this work as well. And so Mel, go ahead. Turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Rashenda. It's good to see so many friends on here, and also a lot of new people as well. And we appreciate it. One thing I want to say to begin, I'm going to be summing up really a lot of what all the speakers so far have said. But the one thing that has not been said is that the creation justice, which is part of the title, the name of our United Methodist Creation Justice Movement, is theologically based. And so everything that we do in terms of solar and other creation justice work that we do is based on our faith as Christians. And there's an intersectionality between faith and creation and all that we're doing. It's good stewardship. We're called to be good stewards. And this is being stewards not only of our money, but also of what God has created. And so for us as United Methodists, that is very, very important. One thing I will say is that as you explore this, one of the first things that I did is I met with our bishop. And if you have not met with your bishop and gotten them on board, as Kara kind of got pulled into meeting with her bishop, but making sure that your bishop understands what you're doing and also is supportive. If you are making any structural changes to your church, you also have to go through the conference, the district committee on building and location. And so dealing with that committee, your DS, but also with conference trustees, if you're dealing with any conference facilities, is very important. One thing I can't stress enough is that this is not just a United Methodist movement, it is interfaith. And Nicole mentioned Interfaith Power and Light. Interfaith Power and Light has a lot of resources. United Methodist Creation Justice Movement has a lot of resources as well. And whether you purchase or whether you lease or whether you engage in a power purchase agreement, whatever you do, this is you are fostering good stewardship, but you're also using this movement towards solar as an educational arm of your church. Several people have talked about the number of people who added solar to their homes after getting involved in this. And so I think that's very important. With Collective Sun, with Solar United Neighbors, as Kara mentioned, one of the things that I'm working on in Texas is to form co-ops, because the more rooftops that we can cover, the lower the cost. And so we can bring the cost down when we form a co-op, just like Solar United Neighbors does this with residential. They're also willing to do that with nonprofits and with churches. And so getting across the board support as you reach out, and don't be afraid to reach out to other denominations as well. With the solar co-op, the idea that we're working on in North Texas, we have a number of other different denominational churches that are interested in becoming part of a solar co-op. And so that's something that I think is really forward-looking. One thing, as you talk to your bishop, your district superintendent, also don't neglect the opportunities for solar on conference offices and building and camping and retreat centers, because this is a way that the annual conference can benefit from implementing solar. And so we have all these opportunities, and funding, Cornerstone, as you mentioned, Texas Methodist Foundation, Florida Foundation, you have sources of funding that will help you wherever you are. And so, you know, pretty much I think that kind of, that's it in terms of, we're connected, we're a connectional church, and this is all about emphasizing and building on the connection that we're a part of. And the more ways that we can do this, and solar is certainly one way, but weatherization and a number of other activities, which are also eligible for IRA funding as well, not just solar. That is, I think, the way for us to go. So I'll leave it at that. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out.
Absolutely. So please, everybody here would love to hear from you. The chat has been busy, which makes my heart sing. So I hope you're hearing possibilities everywhere. And the funding, I know, is always that piece, like, sure, we can dream, but can we pay for it? Block grants, prime grants, tic-tacs, Justice 40 grants, IRA grants, rebates, pay it forward. It's raining money. And the church can take this opportunity, believe me, other people will be, to make a statement in their community about what kind of community church they are. And it just makes me all sorts of glad that we're doing this. So the next thing that happens is we will be moving into breakout rooms. The way it works here is you get to decide what room to go into. I encourage you to stay. Sometimes I say breakout rooms and then I see people leaving. We get so much out of these breakout rooms when we do those here at Movement Cafe. So I really encourage you to stay and participate. The rooms will be open for about 15 minutes, so I'll give a little time for people to join. And then we'll come back here for just a little bit of a debrief and a prayer, and we will head on our way and into the good world of sunshine and people in the spirit of what Kara is doing in her work in Florida. So I'm going to open the rooms. This is the part where everybody gets dragged from the breakout room. And you got an extra couple minutes too, because I couldn't find the right button. It was hiding behind a pop-up. So I hope that those conversations went wonderfully. It's how it usually goes as we filter back in for the final wrap-up together for this cafe. And just a show of hands, how'd it go? Was it good? Who had a good experience in the breakout room? Yeah, that's how it goes. Those conversations get rich real fast. We have 2 real orders of business left, and that is to encourage people to put links in the chat. If you have a link that you want to share, especially for those who offered presentations, we will be sending out information following the cafe. So there will be that we will be passing on questions. But if there's a link you want to share, please do so. I'm sharing my own link. I have a weekly that I send out, that justcreation.org. That helps. I try to bring things together that are useful to those who are working at this intersection and send it out weekly-ish. And the United Methodist Creation Justice Movement, umcreationjustice.org. And from there, you can find links to the Movement Cafe and the newsletters. The most recent newsletter is full of solar resources. And we are going to share a prayer together. We have time for maybe one person who might be brave enough to just share a little bit of how the breakout room went. Anybody want to share anything from that? Oh my goodness. You're like, no, it's recorded. I can't go on record. Go ahead, Kara.
I'll always speak. It was great. I mean, honestly, we really were able to just hear about what was going on in different local churches. David Cox had some really important information about how he was able to pull some of this off without getting into the normal United Methodist, red tape. So it was wonderful.
I will say that David's pastor is a good friend of mine. He moved to Oregon from North Texas. And in fact, John followed me in one of my appointments. And we played golf together all the time. So it's just amazing how we are still connected across the boundaries of states and the breadth of our nation. One thing I will say is that Beth was talking about the movement that's going on now in the United Methodist Church regarding climate is reminiscent of John Wesley's circuit riding days, and how this is good. We can be a force and a factor, not just in the church, but in the nation as a whole. And so really wanted to share that.
Amen. I feel that. We got this. We got this. This is what we do. This is us. So also, I guess just to drop this in, fossil-free UMC is going to be a thing again as we move into another general conference. So we're just at the beginning of those conversations, but please be on the lookout for information about that. So this is our time to pray out. I know there's a million things left, but that's
Let me
okay.
ju-
We're
let
all
me-
connected.
Let me just say that real quickly with United Methodist Creation Justice Movement, we have a number of different task forces. One of them is solar, but we also have advocacy. We have a group that's working on petitions to General Conference. We have an annual conference working group. And so we are connected in so many ways and offer so many opportunities for people to plug in to the work that we're doing. And we encourage everybody to be a part of that.
100%. You are invited, encouraged, and I know many of you already active, and we are so grateful. It gives me hope every day, and I appreciate that. So Dawn, will you lift a prayer for us to pray us out?
Okay, I'm definitely ready to pray. And thanks again, everybody. What a wonderful presentation. And I'm just really grateful for everybody who participated and for our wonderful speakers who provided so much helpful information. Okay, let's pray. Creator God, may we have the wisdom to appreciate the goodness in your creation. By your light, we see light. May we experience your ever-renewing bounty with awe and gratitude, and may we use it wisely. Fill us with your wisdom and your compassion for all as we move forward with these creation care initiatives, and bless all of those who are engaged in this stewardship. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. And thank you, Dawn. And thank you, everyone. We do this again next month, focusing on green teams. And oh my goodness, don't be shy. Get involved, holler, whatever it is you need to do to help you and be part of the movement. So take care.